How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another Python tutorial. And today we're going to be talking about lists. With that said, let's get right into it. Okay, now to create a list, what you want to do is type in the variable name equals and then two brackets like this, two square brackets. Now a list essentially, well, is a list. It can contain multiple items. Now a list can contain one of the following data types that we talked about before. So it can contain an integer, a string, a float, and a boolean. So that's it. For example, here what we can do is fruit. We can, for example, say apple, and then we separate the items with a comma. And then, for example, banana, and then we can also add an orange. Now, if we go ahead and print the list here, what will happen, as you can see, is that it will print the list using the brackets and everything like that. To refer to a certain item in the list, what you want to do is you want to use the index. Now, the index essentially means the place value in the list. For example, this right here, the first item is always at 0. Now, the second item is at 1, 2, and so on and so forth. So that said, if we want to print a certain value, let's say we want to print the orange only, we go ahead and add square brackets to the end of it. And let's say we want to print orange, so that's going to be value 2, place value 2. So we go ahead and print 2, and there we go, it goes ahead and prints the corresponding value. Now, we can actually go ahead and modify lists using some of these items over here. For example, let's say we want to do print a certain thing, but let's say, for example, first we want to add a certain item to the list. So what we do is we do fruit dot, and as you can see, there's a bunch of functions you can use here. For example, we have the append function, which basically adds an item to the end of the list. So let's say I want to add a brand new fruit, and I want to call this, for example, peach. So basically what that will do is that it will add a peach item in the end of the list. Now let's say I want to delete a certain item from the list and you know its index. What you want to do is you want to do dot pop like this. And what this will essentially do is that it will take in an index. So for example, here we want to delete, let's say, the banana. So that with that said, we can go ahead and put index 1 and we'll go ahead and run the app here. And as you can see, we have apple and orange since banana has been deleted. Now, let's say, for example, you want to just go ahead and clear the entire list off. What you do is you do dot clear, and this will basically just delete the whole list. It will return the list back to a blank list. Now, if you want to add a certain item in certain position, for example, let's say after apple, you want to add a new item. So what you do is dot insert, not index, dot insert. And in here, you basically add, first of all, the index, aka the position. So let's say we want to add it after the apple. What we do is we add 1, since after the 0 is always 1, and then after that we add a comma and the item we want to add. For example, let's say we want to add a peach. So with that said, what will happen? As you can see, apple, peach, banana, and orange. Okay, but let's say, for example, you have a list full of numbers. What you can do here is you can go ahead and use the dot sort function, and if you run it, as you can see, it will sort all the numbers in ascending order. And last but not least, let's say you want to reverse a list here. What you want to do is you want to, well, use the dot reverse, and as you can see, we'll go ahead and reverse the list. Now, as you can see, if you try with the functions here, there's a million other functions you can use up until the reverse here, but we've talked about the most of the important ones. Now, let's say, for example, you want to create a grid or something. Now, the way you do this is that you use a two-dimensional list. So for example, let's say we have a grid, for example, that we're creating. So what we do is that a two-dimensional list is actually created by putting a list in a list. So it's a little bit confusing, but I'm gonna try and explain it. So let's say, for example, we have 1, 2, and 3. Now after that, you add in a comma, and let's do that, for example, in order to kind of visualize it a little bit. So you do, for example, 4, 5, and 6. As you can see, this right here is a two-dimensional list where we're putting two lists inside of one list. Now, the way you refer to it, let's say you want to print the value 5, is that you refer to the two indexes like this. So what you do first is that in the first one, you go ahead and put which list you want to print from. So with that said, it's going to be list 2. Now, the index value for this is 1, since this is, 0 and this is 1. So 1. And then in the second value, you put which item from that secondary list you want to print. So let's say we want to print 4. I go ahead and input 0. And as you can see, it goes ahead and print 4. So basically, if I go ahead and remove the indentation here, as you can see, we have our first list and our second list as separate items in the primary list. And inside of these lists, we have secondary items. Now, I get this might be a little confusing, but that's why I thought I'd touch on it a little bit. We will dive further into it when we start doing projects and stuff. But with that said, this right here is kind of the basics of 2D lists. And this right here has been lists, and I will see you guys in the next video.